footballer's life is all about moving. I never had a problem with that because I was the one that was progressing in my football career.
The Crazy Gang's welcoming committee were making sure their new arrival enjoyed a warm welcome.
I'd had a small arthroscopy operation, and at that particular time there was a lot of clubs interested in me.
But in a last-minute twist, Wimbledon learned John Hartson would not be moving as Spurs.
John Hartson was last week tipped to be on his way across South London for £5 million. That seems a dead deal.
I don't want to do any more medicals, to be honest.
I can't pass a medical because of this knee.
A downbeat John Hartson was rushed out of Ibrox today, having been given the worst possible news.
We did not believe he was at the correct fitness at that particular time to go straight into Champions League.
Very seldom you see a player in the building walking around at a club and the deal isn't done.
I'm starting to question myself. I'm starting to think, well, where do I go from here?
The best medical he ever failed. I knew about his injuries, but that didn't matter to me because I think John had played 20 consecutive games for Coventry.
I was going to an absolute giant in Celtic Football Club.
Another season, another club for John Hartson.
So I've proved that my knee's fine and my fitness is good.
This was my complete say. I think he wanted to prove his fitness, and I think he wanted to prove Rangers wrong.
And here's Hartson!
Celtic fans hold John in the highest regard.
Incredible servant of the club.
Celtic Football Club, to me, is a very special place.
These are the two strikers that have grabbed George Graham's eye, and at quite a cost. John Hartson, the teenager, arrives at Highbury in return for a cheque to the tune of £2.5 million.
It's just brilliant for me, it's just a dream come true really to come to a club as big as Arsenal.
A lot of my career I've moved around. When you get offered to go and sign for big clubs, a footballer's life is all about moving and, resettling, but I never had a problem with that. I went to Luton at 16 on a YTS scheme, progressed, and there was quite a few clubs interested in me at that time.
It's just a new start for me, I've just got to start fresh and just perhaps show people, what I can do.
I had 2 great years at Arsenal. They bid £2.5 million, which was a British teenage transfer record at the time.
He was bought for a certain part of the team, a more physical side. By the way, how good was he in the air? We were good at set pieces, and long throws, and that's what John was fantastic at. In out-and-out 9, that's exactly what John was.
Arsene, this way, please.
Arsene Wenger came in, and I remember Arsene Wenger was superb. And he asked me to stay. He said, look, John, he said there was a few clubs wanting me to sign me, and he said to me, look, we'd really like you to stay and be your next man in. I think Arsenal wanted to partner Wright and Bergkamp. They were arguably 2 of the best in the world at that time. So I know a few clubs had come in, and then Harry Redknapp had bid £3.2 million for me, which was another record.
Harry Redknapp has got his man, but at a cost, £5 million.
All I can do now is promise the fans that I'll give 100% and hopefully I'll get a few goals.
They never paid that type of money for a player, West Ham, in their history. So this is all happening to me in a short space of time. I was 21 moving to West Ham, I was 19 moving to Arsenal, and obviously I'd started at 16 at Luton. So within 4 years I'd had this success.
I think there was a charisma to John. I just think that he worked well with other strikers in an era when teams played too hard. He worked well with Bergkamp. He and Kitson effectively kept West Ham up in that very difficult season when the 2 of them came in and scored the goals that kept them up.
I had a really good time at West Ham under Harry. He almost said to me, I'd build my team around you, John.
Manchester United definitely looked at him in '98, but there was a feeling that was more on Martin Edwards, the chairman, and Brian Kidd, Sir Alex's number 2. Ferguson obviously remained to be convinced, went out and got Dwight York, and in a way the rest is history.
If John Hartson looked apprehensive as he arrived at Wimbledon's training ground to sign for his new club, then it was with good reason. Within minutes, the Crazy Gang's welcoming committee were making sure their new arrival, and especially his clothes, enjoyed a warm welcome.
I'm game for a laugh, and it's part of the spirit, and it's excellent,
Wimbledon came out of the blue. I was playing golf and the greenkeeper came out I was putted out on one of the greens. Gospel truth, he said, is there a John Hartson here in this 4-ball? So the guy came over and he said, look John, he said, we've just had a phone call into the golf club from Wimbledon. He said, and you've got to go down to Sam Hammond's house. Wimbledon have made a big bid for you. So I wrapped up the golf game. I said, sorry lad, we'll have a game another day.
Tell us how you feel about being a £7.5 million player then here, John.
I'm absolutely delighted, you know, I'm thrilled to bits really. A few of the lads said in there, how do you feel? I thought my career was going a little bit backwards at West Ham. I'm just delighted really, I want to make a fresh start.
Wimbledon had paid £7.5 million for me, which was in 1999. Massive, massive move. Harry had decided that he wanted to go into a different direction, or whichever way he wanted to go. Maybe it was too big a fee for Harry almost to refuse. He decided to let me go.
I should never have done it, and he's a smashing little lad, Isle. It didn't help my barren spell I've had at West Ham. I don't think it helped my form in a way. It did affect me.
I think it had a big effect on his career. I think his form tailed off after that. He also had little things like, the next day one of the newspapers turned up on his doorstep with some flowers for his wife to say, this is to console you for living with an animal. It was quite strong stuff.
Hartson's Wimbledon career has never really caught fire. He's been carrying injuries too.
It has been frustrating, just sitting on the sidelines all the time because I'm not used to being injured. I've never been injured before for this length of time.
I'd had a small arthroscopy operation, just a little tidy up with my cartilage. Nothing big, probably kept me out for 2 or 3 weeks. And at that particular time, there was a lot of clubs interested in me.
Wimbledon reacted instantly to the rumours circulating at the weekend. Rumour number one was that West Ham were on the brink of buying back Hartson at cut price.
You're not getting back John Hartson, pal. You blundered. We're not fixing your blunder, pal. Take that.
I'm not saying I'll never leave this club because you never know in football, especially what's around the corner. You know, things happen overnight and they happen very, very quickly. I'm just applying my trade here and training every day and getting on with the job.
The man to finally put some fire into the Spurs attack. After talks with Spurs chairman Alan Sugar, John Hartson's move to North London is on.
I don't think it's any secret they've been short of firepower.
I failed a medical at Spurs.
In a last-minute twist, Wimbledon learned John Hartson would not be moving as Spurs issued a terse press statement bluntly stating, John Hartson has had a thorough medical and as a result we have reluctantly decided not to proceed at this moment with the transfer of the player to Tottenham Hotspur.
It was David Pleat, George Graham, who previously signed me. I'd previously played under both managers, and it was Alan Sugar, the chairman. I spent all day with Dr. King, walking around White Hart Lane, signing for Spurs for £6 million, and that fell through because of my knee.
Curtain has fallen on the Crazy Gang for the last time as a Premiership club.
At the moment, Terry Burton has to think in terms of paring down the wage bill. He confirmed that John Hartson is for sale at the right price.
Financially, we have to reduce the wage bill, and if the right offer comes along and it's right for everybody concerned, then we will listen.
Hartson, the subject of yet more speculation, this time linking him with Celtic and Man City.
Martin, you'll be aware of comments made this week by John Hartson. He reckons you made an offer for him.
No, if you're asking have I made an official offer, I have not.
At the particular time, I'd had no allegiances to Celtic. And then Rangers Football Club had come in for me.
John Hartson was released by Wales for the day to go to Ibrox to discuss personal terms after Wimbledon agreed a fee of £6 million with the Scottish champions.
You up to sign today?
Yeah. I can't say too much because nothing's happened yet, but hopefully I'll have more to say later, like, you know.
When did you first hear about it?
Yeah, a couple of days ago.
The thing I think people forget was that 3 or 4 days before the window was closing, Rangers lost 6-2 at Celtic Park. And it was the first real setback of the Dick Advocat era. He did 2 years of fantastic success. And Rangers' response to that was to spend £10 million on Ronald de Boer and John Hartson.
I flew up to Glasgow in Sir David Murray's private jet. I'm signing for Rangers Football Club, £6.5 million. And I see Ronald de Boer in the centre circle when I'm walking down the side of the pitch.
The We were going to play Hartson up top with De Boer off him, just to change the dynamic. Dick Advocaat, he was looking for a different type of striker. He wanted a bigger striker. Ultimately, Rangers would go and spend an awful lot of money on Andre Flo. But at that stage, Hartson was the initial target.
I'm quickly ushered to a hospital to get a quick little bit of a medical, a scan here, a scan there. And I come back to the ground, I'd agreed all my terms. It was a 5-year deal. And I'm there with a pen to paper.
A downbeat John Hartson was rushed out of Ibrox today, having been given the worst possible news. His physical fitness is not good enough for Rangers. And Murdo Mackay says the Wimbledon striker's knee problem had no bearing on the collapse of the switch.
Rangers knew about that before we started this process, so they were aware of that. John would have been pitched into the Champions League, and Rangers felt at this point that they weren't willing to take that risk. As far as I'm concerned, it's I wouldn't say it's totally dead, no.
What makes you say that?
Instinct.
Hartson, still in his cream Welsh FA tracksuit, boarded a private jet at Glasgow Airport today and headed home to his family, having pulled out of Wales World Cup qualifier in Belarus because of his Ibrox heartache.
It's a day where we were running around daft that day, signing Ronald De Boer, deadline 2 days ahead, and you're thinking, are we doing this for the right reason? Our doctor told us there was a risk. I think what you've got is people tittle-tattling, saying the reason he didn't play for Rangers because he failed his knee in a medical. That is not the case. We did not believe he was at the correct fitness at that particular time to go straight in the Champions League. Now, no disrespect, to score against Huddersfield is slightly different to score against Galatasaray.
The doctor walked in and said, I'm sorry, Mr. Advocaat. It was Dick Advocaat that was paying £6 million for me. He said something showed up on John's knee. So Dick Advocaat, naturally disappointed, he said, look, John, I've got to go with my doctors, you know, that's the criteria. He says, I've got to back my staff. And then I was back on the private jet about half an hour later.
John will, you know, talks about it as the best medical he ever failed. It seems strange you get so far down the line and a player of his calibre, the possibility of signing him, it would have been a massive threat had he signed for Rangers, but thankfully he didn't.
It's very, very seldom you see a player in the building walking around at a club and the deal isn't done, but historically Rangers have been stung a couple of times signing players who had glitches, you might say, in America. Famously Daniel Prodan was one a number of years earlier, but there had been others as well, and I think they'd reached the stage where they weren't going to take any more risk.
And then I failed a medical at Charlton.
John Hartson was last week tipped to be on his way across South London for £5 million. But for the time being, that seems a dead deal.
Been a lot of speculation, and if there was any chance, it would have been done.
Spent the day with Alan Kirbishley, walking around the valley and being in the training ground. And I was training every day. I was scoring goals every weekend. And I'm thinking to myself, you know, I can't pass a medical because of this knee.
I'm not bitter, no, not at all. I'm not a bitter person, you know. I just get on with life. I've got no problems with my knee or nothing, you know. I'm lashing balls in and everything else. And it does get a bit, you know, frustrating at times. You know, people keep going on about medicals and that. So that does unsettle me a little bit.
I shouldn't think you want to see another one again, do you?
No, I don't. I don't want to do any more medicals, to be honest.
So I'm starting to question myself. I think my previous managers were saying, John's fine. He's doing everything asked of him on the training ground. He's playing every week. He's scoring goals. But for some reason, I just couldn't pass this medical. And it was very, very frustrating. It was quite worrying, actually. I'm starting to think, well, where do I go from here?
As transfer soap operas go, this one was beginning to rival Coronation Street. Wimbledon have waived their £5 million fee. The Sky Blues will pay every time the Welsh international pulls on their shirt.
He's had injuries, but if you look at his record of playing, he plays a lot of games.
It's all about pressure, this game, anyway. If you can't handle pressure, you're in the wrong game.
I actually failed the medical first time around at Coventry, but it was Gordon Strachan that pushed it forward and obviously did the deal.
We tried to buy John from Wimbledon a few months before, but then Rangers came in. John failed the medical. We went back to Wimbledon, ended up doing a deal with Wimbledon to buy John for $750,000. I trusted Gordon implicitly. You know, if Gordon felt strongly enough and he'd got a commitment out of John that John knew his own body, he'd certainly not miss games for the sake of his knee.
Coventry City are doomed. So First Division football, 34 years of top-flight football comes to an end.
He was only played 12 games at the end of that season for us, but he certainly gave his all. The shame was, and I think we would have stayed up if we'd managed to get him 12 games earlier.
First of all, John was staying, and then he was going. I'm hopeful that nobody has the money to buy him. I think John's worth about 12 million in today's market. I'm not going to give up trying to persuade him to stay. But if he has to go, then it has to be a realistic fee.
I had a meeting with Brian Richardson and Gordon Strachan, and they did everything to keep me. They offered me an extra, I won't mention the numbers, but it was quite a hefty number to stay on. They really pushed the boat out in terms of trying to get me to stay. And I'd gone on holiday and I'd almost said, yes, I'll come back. But they've sold Bellamy to Newcastle for 6 million and they'd sold Hadji to Aston Villa for 4 million. So I've got 1 or 2 other clubs interested in me. I think Steve McLaren, he was interested in taking me to Middlesbrough. I thought then it was a no-brainer to move on. Coventry, they gave me their word, and they've broken that.
John was a realist. Money was going to be tight. There was a bit of a clear out, but it was the big money players, and John knew that.
Martin O'Neill has transformed this famous club.
We're a year into proceedings at Celtic. We've just won the league, won the treble, but essentially we had Chris Sutton and Henrik Larsson. So anything happened to any of those two, it's going to be a struggle, particularly now with European football. And the very obvious thing was to try and get a centre forward who could maybe compete for a place with them. And John, to me, was the obvious target.
Martin O'Neill, when he first came in 2000, he famously described Rangers as a benchmark, and he wanted backing. He wanted more depth, he wanted more strength, he wanted a Celtic squad that was equipped not just for dominance at home, but to go to Europe and take the fight to big teams in Europe.
I'd known John from a distance when I was manager of Leicester City, an excellent centre forward. I knew all about him, I knew about his injuries, but that didn't matter to me because I think John had played 20 consecutive games for Coventry.
Dermot Desmond was chairman. I got a phone call to see if we could meet in Dublin, but I was preempted a bit because I knew what was coming, and that was a bit of a fluke. Somebody overheard a conversation between Dermot and Martin O'Neill, and that person who overheard the conversation happened to be a Coventry City fan. And he called me and said, Celtic want to buy John Hartson. Dermot kept saying to me, he said, well, how much did you pay for him? And I kept saying, well, that's no concern of yours. So he said, how much do you want for him? And I said, 7 million. And he said, but he won't pass the medical.
I remember sitting on the bus one day, I was at the back of the bus, and Gordon handed me his phone, and it was Martin O'Neill. He said, we know all about your previous history. We'd like to sign you as a football club. And I thought, well, brilliant. I said, great, Martin, I can't wait to get going. I've had all the disappointments. He said, don't worry about that.
We agreed a deal that was, I think, 6 million plus so much every 20 games that John played.
Gordon Strachan actually said to me, if you are going to go to a club, John, he said Celtic's a magnificent football club.
Another season, another club for John Hartson at Celtic Park to become Martin O'Neill's record signing. How are you feeling at this time?
You're back here tomorrow. Yeah, I'm excited about it.
It's great to be saying tomorrow, John. Hopefully, I'm hopeful. Have you passed your medical okay? I'm doing it now. Good luck. Cheers. Cheers, guys.
Because of his medical history, any concerns there, or do you expect him to pass it?
I expect everything to be okay.
I had a small little medical in the physio's office. Just did something to my knee, tested my hamstrings, gave me a little scan, and Celtic pushed it through.
We had a very, very good medical team, so they give me the okay. If his knees had been falling apart, it wouldn't have gone through. I'm not going to spend the club's money on somebody who's definitely not going to play the games. Dermot Desmond, he said, if you want to go and do it, We've got the wherewithal to do it. He never questioned it.
Treble joy of a different kind for Celtic, as Steve Guppy joined John Hartson and Mo Masila in a triple signing spree for the champions.
What gives me the most pleasure, I think, is the black mark that was hanging over me in terms of my medical sort of side of things. So I've proved that my knee's fine and my fitness is good, so I'm ready to play now.
Always thought he's a good player. I'm hoping he will do well for Celtic. I think he will.
Was there any pressure on you thinking this is my signing? Was there pressure on you to make this signing work?
Most likely. I think that's the case for every signing. You want to be right. The last thing you want to do is a catastrophic signing, somebody who's costing you the football club a lot of money. This was my complete say. I think he wanted to prove his fitness, and I think he wanted to prove Rangers wrong.
If you're playing for Celtic, then you want to pummel Rangers, and vice versa. But I don't think you sort of need any extra motivation. Maybe it did. Maybe it did feel that way, because to get so far down the line at Rangers and then for them to pull the plug, and of course they had their own reasons for it, but maybe he felt sort of let down, scorned, whatever, but that worked to Celtic's benefit. And fair play to Martin for actually moving after that.
Was there any concern that the fans wouldn't accept him because he had wanted to go there?
I think I had a couple of pounds in the bank, as it were, because we had just won the treble. And some of the players I had signed had done exceptionally well. There might have been one or two doubters and saying, well, why would he want to go to Rangers? But you could argue the case that John maybe, as being a Welshman living in England for all his time, maybe didn't understand the nuances of Celtic and Rangers to begin with. So that didn't really bother me.
Well, I can remember going in to Celtic Park, and I was going to face the press. We did them photos up in the stand, and I'm looking over and I'm thinking, wow, you know, this is something special. I was going to an absolute giant in Celtic Football Club.
It was a lot of money, and particularly a lot of money for someone who couldn't pass a medical. Martin O'Neill did leave himself open a bit if things had gone awry, but they didn't, and it worked out perfectly for Martin.
I know there's going to be competition, but I've had competition wherever I've been, but I just think it's healthy for the club.
I went in to see Martin, and I basically said, look, Gaffer, Chris, fantastic centre forward, and Henrik was a genius. So I'm thinking, how am I going to get into this side?
I didn't fear John coming into Celtic. It was good for Celtic in terms of having competition. My versatility was a strength, the fact that I could play centre-half, played in midfield.
I remember Martin's words. He said to me, John, just wait your turn. He said, I will get you in sooner rather than later. You'll have the crowd eating out of your hand. And when I got in the team, I never came out of the team.
I had no doubt that if getting his opportunity, he would score goals. And I think just putting that into his mind that Chris can play in a number of positions, I think he felt that. If I'd said to him, listen, this is absolutely my first choice, and these two, and you're only in the side when they're not fit, I think that might have had a negative effect on him. But it wasn't the case. It was there for him to battle it out.
He used to play 3-5-2 with the sort of two holding midfielders, and I'd play as a number 10, and John and Henrik would play up top, and that all worked well. We were all players who had a good understanding of what the strengths and weaknesses of each other were.
It was really difficult for him to break that partnership, but he managed to do it, and he never looked back. He scored so many goals, and he became a vital player for Celtic.
Sutton, and here's Hartson! A big goal in a big game. Oh yes, John Hartson!
He always had that striker's brain in terms of instinct, different types of finishes. You see him finish with the outside of his right foot. He could chip, he could volley, he could head.
He loves the freedom. He was really relaxed. You sit in bed and you have crisps. And I was like, Big Johnny, you should not be eating that. He says, Stan, don't worry about it. Just cross it and I'll be there. That was his words. And when you have somebody like that in the room and, you know, put your mind in ease, you know, before a big moment at a big game.
He's a gentle giant, really, within the dressing room. I always felt with John, though, he was a player, when he was stirred up, then that was when you got the best out of him.
John proved himself. He proved himself in domestic football in Scotland, and he proved himself in the European scene.
He actually had a really bad start. I think it was about 11 games without a goal. I think his first goal maybe against Dundee United, and after that the goals just kept coming, and big goals. He famously scored a terrific goal against Liverpool at Anfield, but he scored a really important goal against Celta Vigo in Spain, scored in a cup final against Rangers. He scored big goals on big occasions, and every goal he scored for Celtic, the Celtic fans would think that was another dig at Rangers because Rangers didn't want him.
John was excellent for the length of time that I was involved with him at the football club.
When you mentioned the name John Hartson to the Celtic fans, they would just turn around and say, what a player, what a guy. Incredible servant of the club.
I think Celtic fans hold John in the highest regard, and quite rightly so. I think that particular period, people look back with great fondness of that.
When I was severely ill with cancer, the Celtic family, they just went over and above in terms of the support and the letters and the telegrams and the flowers and everything else. And I came out of the hospital and I thought, well, I've got a few tattoos anyway. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to have a Celtic tattoo on my arm. Celtic Football Club, to me, is a very special place.